Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning to many of you who are joining us around the country. Thank you all for joining this very important conversation today. My name is Tiffany Garner, and I work as the Community Violence Initiatives Manager here at Giffords. I definitely wanted to welcome Senator Van Hollen, my distinguished panelists, James Timpson, also known as JT, Liz Banash, and Dr. Joseph Richardson. So welcome everyone to today's conversation. I have the honor of sharing this virtual stage, as I mentioned, to the Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who's running for re-election this fall, and who Giffords PAC is proud to endorse in his campaign. I'm also joined by, as I mentioned, my distinguished panelist, James Simpson. He's the Director of the Youth Work and Crisis Intervention for ROCA Baltimore. Liz Banash, who's the Executive Director of Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence, and Dr. Joseph Richardson, who is the Joel and Kim Feller Professor of African American Studies and Medical Anthropology at the University of Maryland. We're all here to discuss why addressing gun violence is so important and why Senator Van Hollen is the best candidate on the ballot for this November to continue advancing gun safety priorities in Washington. Before we get into our conversation, I want to share with you all a little bit more about Senator Van Hollen and why he's the best candidate. Senator Van Hollen, who was first elected in the United States Senate by the people of Maryland in 2016, before coming to the Senate, Senator Van Hollen served as a member of the Maryland State Legislature and was then elected to the United States House of Representatives in 2002, serving Maryland's 8th Congressional District. The senator has chaired both the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee and the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and also served as the Democratic assistant to the majority leader during his time in Congress. Throughout his extensive career in public service, the senator has consistently advocated
I think she's back.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, to Senator Van Hollen, hello and welcome. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here. Would you like to say a few words?
Sure, and you covered most of it anyway. So thank you, Tiffany. Thank you to Giffords, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation with the great leaders that you've assembled for this discussion. I just would like to say at the outset, please give my best to Gabby Giffords. She was a dear colleague when I served in the House, and she's taken her own sort of personal tragedy and encounter with gun violence and focused all her energy into trying to save lives around the country. And that's what Giffords is all about. And I'm grateful and proud to have the support of Giffords as we continue our efforts to defeat violence in all its different forms, and getting both to root causes and to just the proliferation of guns. And that combination of those two things ends up costing so many people their lives in neighborhoods. So again, thank you, and looking forward to the conversation. And thank you to the leaders who you introduced who are joining us. James Timpson, JT, thank you, and Roca. To Dr. Richardson, thank you for all the expertise and thought you brought to this. And to Liz, thank you for all the work you do with Marylanders to prevent gun violence. So looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Senator. And we are glad that you have joined us today. So I wanted us to have an intro video from Gabby. Unfortunately, Gabby was unable to be with us this morning, but we have a video that we want to just kind of get us started with today's program. So I want to introduce to you all our founder and fearless leader, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, who's prepared some remarks for everyone today.
I'm Gabby Giffords. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. January 8th, 2011. Changed my life forever. I was a congresswoman. I was shot in my head while meeting with my constituents. I couldn't walk. I couldn't talk. I've watched gun violence destroy too many lives. After the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School, I've said, enough is enough. I founded a group called Giffords. We are on a mission to end gun violence.
Thank you so much, Gabby. We admire her courage to fight gun violence, and it's so inspiring, this her story and her life that she continues to live, as far as in fighting for the lives of so many who are impacted by gun violence, and especially community violence, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today. We're also going to hear a little bit more about how she remains so dedicated to this work. So let's hear another clip from her on how she maintains the hope and inspiration that she has.
I've known the darkest of days, days of pain and uncertain recovery. But confronted by despair, I've summoned hope. Confronted by paralysis and aphasia, I responded with grit and determination. I put one foot in front of the other. I found one word and then I found another. My recovery is a daily fight, but fighting makes me stronger. Words once came easily. Today I struggle to speak, but I've not lost my voice. America needs all us to speak out, even when you have to fight to find the words. I'm also in a second fight, the fight to stop gun violence. It's also a fight forged by tragedy and pain, a fight that can change lives. We are at a crossroads. We can let the shooting continue, or we can act. We can protect our families, our future. We can vote. We can be on the right side of history. Please join us in this fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gabby. We always appreciate her lifting her voice and how she always speaks about we are at a crossroads. This is such a critical time in our country, within the state of Maryland, to continue to advance this effort of sharing what it takes to fight gun violence and especially community violence. And I have brought along my partners, my colleagues, and I'm going to go ahead and call y'all my dear friends to join us in having this important conversation as you all continue to lead the way in Maryland. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues here to introduce themselves to you. I'm going to start with James. Y'all okay if I call him JT? That's what we call him. JT, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all this afternoon. Senator Van Hollen, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you've done and continue staying in the fight with us. We need all the support that we can get. Again, my name is James Timpson. I go by JT. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships and Safety for ROCA Baltimore in Maryland and the ROCA Impact Institute. ROCA is a behavior change model that deals with high-risk young men between the ages of 16 to 24 who are at the center of urban violence. Let me just describe what high risk is, and then I'll be done, Tiff. I won't go on too long right now. High risk.
All good. The floor is yours.
High risk meaning the young men who are really your most likely to be your next victims or perpetrators of gun violence, as we see all too often, not only in Baltimore, cities like Baltimore, but just all across the country. So gun violence is definitely something that affects our communities. It's been an honor to work with Giffords, Senator Van Hollen, and my esteemed colleagues who are on here with me to really try to see what we can do about making a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, JT. All right, Liz, welcome. Or Elizabeth, but we call her Liz. Liz, tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with Marylanders to prevent gun violence.
Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks so much. And thank you, Tiffany, for your leadership on this, and Team Giffords. You guys have been so supportive. Again, Senator Van Hollen, we can't thank you enough for your support here as well. I run Marylanders Prevent Gun Violence, a statewide advocacy organization. Right now, we are in the thick of legislative session here in Maryland, which runs January through April. So we're working to pass a number of key pieces of legislation. We also have a programmatic side. We run, among the many things we do, I run with Greg Jackson of the Community Justice Action Fund, the Maryland Violence Prevention Coalition, and I am really proud that Tiffany, Dr. Richardson, and JT all serve on that as well. We feel it's really important that we address all aspects of gun violence in all communities that are impacted by gun violence, and I think the Maryland Violence Prevention Coalition is a key way that we really elevate communities in Maryland that have been disproportionately impacted by violence for generations. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Liz. And we're so happy that you're here with us today. And last but absolutely not least, Dr. Joe Richardson, tell the folks who you are. So glad to have you today.
Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. And thank you, Tiffany, again, for assembling this stellar group of panelists. And thank you again, Senator Van Hollen, for all your continued support in the gun violence prevention space. So I'm Dr. Joseph Richardson. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland, College Park in the Department of African American Studies and Anthropology, and also a professor in the Department of Epidemiology and Public Health at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. My work primarily focuses on gun violence and trauma, and I utilize the two busiest trauma centers in the state of Maryland as my research labs, University of Maryland Capital Region Health, which is the busiest level 2, and then the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center in Baltimore, which is the busiest level 1 in the state. And so my work is translational. I use my research to inform interventions and translating my research into interventions, and I happen to be the co-founder and co-director of one of the hospital violence intervention programs in the state Capital Region Violence Intervention Program, which I directed from 2017 to 2019, and now serving as the lead epidemiologist for the Violence Intervention Program, which is HVIP at the University of Maryland Shock Trauma Center. And so I'm just happy to be here and discuss the ways that our work can inform more innovative interventions, practice, and policy in the state of Maryland.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Joe. One of the wonderful things about the four of us is we all met, trying to roam the halls in Annapolis back in 2020, try to champion for community violence funding. And so from there, we all have worked together for the past few years and really trying to make moves and make some advancements in the state of Maryland. So happy to join you all to join us today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little break from our panelists. And so now I want to show you all a quick video to set today's tone and conversation around community violence. I want to highlight ROCA. ROCA, which is where JT serves, as he mentioned, high-risk young men in the Baltimore area since 2018. They provide a unique, effective approach that combines relentless outreach with cognitive behavioral therapy and a deep grounding in community. Their work, no doubt, has led to changing communities in their area, and they serve to really create a more safer and stable tomorrow. That's at least the goal. And so they work really tirelessly to do this work. Let's take a look at their video and how we were so honored to have them as our 2021 Community Partner Award winner. Let's take a look now.
Gun violence in Baltimore is nothing new. I'm from this city. I'm a son of Baltimore. My generation and generations before me are responsible for a lot of what we see now. It's our role to kind of go back and help correct some things that we helped make wrong. It's something that you just can't turn away from.
ROCA is a long-term behavioral health program. We work with 16 to 24-year-old young men at the Center of Urban Violence with the goal of keeping them alive and out of jail.
We deal with a population of young men that's highly traumatized, and trauma plays a huge role in their participation in the lifestyle that they live.
What's up, bro?
The role that we play is to help those young men learn to resolve conflicts in a healthier way.
we can help them deal with the emotions that they're experiencing, change their thinking, and eventually change their behaviors. If you support young people and you give them the love and support that they need, then they will grow and flourish as individuals and turn away from that violence.
And to hear some of the conversations that we've had with young men, I can tell you that they're in a way different place than they were a year ago. So I know that we've made impacts on the way that young people think, and I know we've made impacts on the decisions that they make.
ROCA alone can't solve this problem. It's going to take the city, the police department, criminal justice partners to work together.
We need partners that are doing economic development, social development, drug treatment, changing the gun laws.
What I appreciate most about the partnership that we have with Giffords is their ability to fight and advocate for us up there at the top. We're credible messages here, but the people at Giffords are credible messages in their lane that they're in. So we need people to make sure that the message of the front line doesn't get left out of the work. We know that this is not the end, it's just the beginning. It really gives us a real opportunity to affect change in gun violence in Baltimore.
What we're doing here is working. This is something that every city should be looking at.
And ROCA is a proud partner in the gun violence prevention movement, and together we can save lives.
Thank you for allowing us to have that moment just to show to you all our community partner award, but also to hear the important message from JT and some of our other partners at ROCA about how critical their work is and how they work to save lives every day, to reach those young people out there, to hopefully, try to create another path for them out of that lifestyle and into a safer pathway in life. So thank you, ROCA. Continue to do amazing work that you do. So now I'm going to kick off our conversation. I'm going to turn my attention to the Senator for just a second. So Senator, I would like to begin with you. During your time in the Senate, you have been a champion for securing necessary funding to address the violence plaguing communities around the country, including in cities like Baltimore. Unfortunately, though, we continue to see lives lost at the barrel of guns every single day. And these tragedies often disproportionately impact communities of color. Can you talk a little bit more about the root causes of this epidemic? Why is it personally important to you to disrupt the cycle of violence?
Well, Tiffany, as you and our terrific speakers here have indicated, gun violence is an issue that has to be addressed from all different directions. And there are three big ways. One is to really invest in disinvested areas. I mean, parts of Baltimore have been areas that historically have been redlined. There's been disinvestment. And so we need to invest in everything from universal early education to more resources to our schools, workforce training programs, apprenticeships, that whole set of things. And that, in fact, is part of what we're trying to do as part of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. Then there's the issue of dealing with just the flood of guns in our neighborhoods. And while Maryland, thanks to a lot of people on this call, has some of the best common sense gun laws in the country, we're not an island. We're not an island, and guns can come from all other states that don't have those kind of limitations. And that's why it's so important to work at the federal level to address that, including now ghost guns, which are an increasing problem. And then finally, there's the work that we've got to do that JT just talked about, that Dr. Richardson's talked about, that Liz is talking about, that we're all talking about, which is programs to intervene directly and programs aimed at prevention in the first place. And we just need to step up our resources because these are programs that work. We just need to make sure they have the resources to take to scale and to break that cycle of trauma. This also goes along with making sure we address criminal justice reform and mass incarceration and provide a pathway for returning citizens so that they don't find themselves locked out of job opportunities for their entire lives. So there are lots of pieces to this, but this focus on more resources for community gun violence prevention programs is an essential element.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate you for mentioning the importance of addressing areas of disinvestment and looking at this situation as it is multi-pronged. There's not just a one way, there's a lot of complexities into addressing community violence. So I'm going to now open it up to our panelists to respond to the question around the root causes of community violence. So JT, Liz, Joe, feel free to jump in and share some other insights that you all have around addressing the root causes of violence. And perhaps you can talk about, and I'm just going to add this on, perhaps you can talk about some potential solutions or some of the best practices that you see in your work that can help address a lot of the root causes of violence.
I would definitely follow up on Senator Van Hollen's point in terms of the concentration of poverty. And I think ultimately what we see in terms of gun violence and all the studies that have been done is concentrated poverty and persistent poverty has been the most contributing risk factor for gun violence. And in fact, if you look at certain specific neighborhoods in Baltimore, for example, those neighborhoods that are redlined, studies have shown, particularly studies that have recently been produced by the University of Maryland, have found shorter life expectancies in those neighborhoods. And in fact, I believe the Department of Health, the last report that they had published, the life expectancy in Sandtown, Winchester was comparable to the life expectancy in Haiti, which is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So, I mean, in terms of the work that we have to do to address forms of not only interpersonal violence, but the structural violence that's happening in these communities in terms of concentrated poverty, underfunded schools, food deserts, as well as medical deserts, right? How people have access not only to healthy food, but also access to mental health resources within those communities for young people and families in general that have been traumatized by the structural violence in those communities. So ultimately, we need to address those risk factors before we even begin to address the interventions. How do we address concentrated poverty and the health and disparities in those communities?
Mm-hmm. Very well said, Dr. Joe. I oftentimes think about when it comes to leaders and having these conversations, how often is the term structural violence or structural racism included as we try to look at strategies and solutions? That's an important term, heavy term, very difficult to discuss, but in order to solve this, we've got to tackle some of these harder issues here that are really underlying a lot of the violence. Liz, to open up, Liz or JT, any other additional comments?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say, first of all, that, I had a daughter born 3 days after Congresswoman Giffords was shot in Arizona. And I can remember sitting on the couch trying to take care of her and thinking, like, what world have I brought this child into? And at that point, I was in my mid-30s, and I can think back now, like, how incredibly privileged I am as a white woman to, like, not have had that experience until I was in my mid-30s. I speak to so many young women in Baltimore now who don't even have children, are just terrified of the prospect of what the future holds for their children. And I think that said, I'm still hopeful. Like, I am incredibly hopeful, largely because of the work that I see JC and Dr. Richardson doing. But I'm also hopeful because, for so long, I think that the gun lobby has really been pushing the agenda, right? And we haven't had much of a say on the gun violence prevention side. And now we finally have people running as candidates, as gun violence prevention candidates. And how exciting is that? And this three-prong approach that Senator Van Hollen talked about is so crucial. I mean, Senator Van Hollen was working in the 1990s on this issue. He's been working for decades. There was a piece of legislation in the 90s that he passed that made any gun that was sold in Maryland, a handgun, had to have an integrated locking device. I know that that law has saved scores of lives, but it is also taken the burden, the onus off of Black communities and put it on the gun manufacturers. And that's really important when we're talking about this element of criminal justice reform and mass incarceration. We want to be careful that our laws are putting that burden back on the gun manufacturers, back on the industry that I think has really proliferated and caused a lot of this problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Liz, and since we're talking, you have definitely shared some insights about the history of how Senator Van Hollen has really supported the work. So with your organization, Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence, you've done really extraordinary work over the last few years to make a difference. Talk a little bit about what inspires you to continue to, do this work of reducing violence and increasing safety. I know you mentioned about your daughter and you're just like, wait, what did I bring her into? But what continues that passion, so to speak, or that interest to do this work?
Well, first of all, I want to thank Giffords because you guys have been on the ground helping us, and JT and Dr. Richardson, as you said, we were in the floors, like walking those aisles. We met early on with this violence intervention and prevention. And, one of my favorite President Biden quotes is, don't tell me what your values are, show me your budget. And that bill that we all met on, that was a funding bill. We got pretty modest, but important funding for violence intervention and prevention work, like the type of stuff you saw talked about ROCA and the hospital-based work that Dr. Richardson did. That bill was vetoed. Right? We got that. We had to override a veto. So what I would encourage everyone watching this call, like when you're looking at people that you're thinking about who you're going to vote for, don't just listen to what they're saying. Don't just listen to like what they're telling you their values are. Look at what they're spending their money on. Look at how they're allocating their assets. Are they invested in infrastructure? Are they working to make sure that communities that have been intentionally underserved, intentionally underinvested in? Are they working to make sure those communities get funding and money? Are they working to make sure the hospital programs that Dr. Richardson is involved in are getting money, that ROCA, that other violence intervention and prevention programs are getting money? I happen to know that Senator Van Hollen is working to that. Are they getting funding from the NRA? Like who's supporting them? Who's bankrolling them? I mean, I think those are all really important things I would encourage the listeners here to think about when they're looking at who they're going to be supporting.
Thank you, Liz. Very, very insightful there. So Senator Van Hollen, you've heard a little bit about what inspires, our panelists, or, some of the areas that they have been really working on and, striving to make the change. And so we know that it's incumbent upon our leaders to find courage to act on issues. And many folks, you kind of look at on the other side of the aisle, they kind of choose to simply just offer when it comes to violence. They offer just prayers and thoughts and not really the real policy change that we need to see happen. So as you know, in Maryland, we see tragedies that just continue to occur every day. And recently, of course, I'm sure you are aware of the shooting that took place at Magruder High School in Durwood. So, however, some of your colleagues still remain unmoved. What do you think is necessary to move the needle on this issue and bring legislators together to create these lasting issues that often includes what we're talking about, addressing the issues of structural racism, really dig into those really deep solutions of what could really create that change? What are some of your thoughts?
Well, this has been the challenge we're fighting as a country right now. A lot of the legislation in the Senate and the House, as well as at the state level. And I mentioned earlier some of the big investments we're calling for as part of the Build Back Better agenda. And I'm glad Liz reminded us of President Biden's statement about look at someone's budget to determine what they really care about. Are they investing in gun violence prevention programs at the community level? Are we passing legislation to prevent neighborhoods from being flooded with guns? In the case of the shooting at Magruder High School, that was a ghost gun. We are working to try to address that as we speak. In fact, Senator Cardin and I just wrote to President Biden asking them to accelerate the federal standards. The ATF really needs to move more quickly because we know in Baltimore and around the state and around the country, you see additional deaths from ghost guns. So this is one of those areas, as we've all been saying, it's not a one-dimensional challenge. You've got to address this at all levels. And we do need to make these investments in these neighborhoods that have been left behind and redlined and the victims of segregation. We need common sense gun safety laws, and Liz is working on some at the state level right now, which I support. And we need at the federal level to do the same thing. And then we need the resources We need the resources for programs like the one JT's running, ROCA. And Dr. Richardson has really done a great work focusing on trauma in hospitals to break that cycle of violence. But we, as I said earlier, we need to take these to scale. And, we can talk a little bit more about our ongoing efforts to provide resources. But in terms of succeeding here, I've talked to too many moms, too many dads who have lost loved ones. And I just wish some of my colleagues would take the time to listen to those stories as they make up their mind on whether or not to support these investments, because I don't see how anyone can turn away from these tragedies that are preventable if we do the work and provide the resources.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad you mentioned that with colleagues, and especially as we're looking at trying to figure out this whole thing with bipartisan support. Any thoughts on how we can reduce violent crime without being bogged down in partisanship that kind of takes over our political discourse?
Well, unfortunately, when it comes to the common sense gun safety measures, even dealing with ghost guns, but universal background checks at the federal level, closing the gun show loophole. Unfortunately, the gun industry and the NRA have really had a lock on the Republican Party at the federal level. So we're just going to need to keep pushing there. We just need to get the votes, and if we can get bipartisan votes, great. But we certainly need reinforcements on that front. I do believe we have more of an opportunity here on the investment side on community violence prevention programs. And so we should really also focus our efforts there as part of the budget. So as part of the upcoming budget that we hope to pass by mid-February, I've included, we've included a number of funding streams for some of the organizations that are represented here today. As well as other organizations in Maryland, in Baltimore, that are doing the work on the ground. And I hope we will get bipartisan support for that overall appropriations bill, because at the end of the day, we've got to put the money and the resources into these important programs at the neighborhood level if we're going to really tackle this issue.
Absolutely. Well, listen, we're excited about hearing about funding streams. So hopefully, yes, we can get some things passed and get money in the hands of those who are doing the work and who need that constant support. So thank you so much, Senator. Dr. Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you. So we've heard a lot about different strategies to reduce violence. And I know you are, you know it all in that arena. And you bring always bring a unique perspective to the conversation and giving your work in research and public health. So when we talk about reducing violence in our communities, we hear about the need for law enforcement investment. So while this is an important and necessary aspect of violence intervention, we know there are other programs that can have a direct impact. Let's talk a little bit about the importance of alternative methods of intervention, like hospital-based programs, and why are these so important?
Sure, thank you, Tiffany. Great question. Well, what we already know is that we cannot incarcerate our way out of this, right? The increasing the number of police and increasing the number of prisons in the United States we've already seen what that is happening in the deleterious effects before in terms of the impacts it's had on communities. And we've talked a lot about felony disenfranchisement and the collateral consequences of a felony. And in many respects, that often drives what we see in the hospital-based space. So hospital violence intervention programs, which were started in the late 1990s. And in fact, one of the first hospital violence intervention programs was started at the University of Maryland R. Adams College Shock Trauma Center by a surgeon by the name of Dr. Carnell Cooper. And those programs are designed to prevent the cycle of repeat violent injury. And so what we know from the science that we've conducted over the years is that anywhere between 5 and 65% of individuals that have been injured will come back to the hospital again for another injury. And so at one of the hospitals where I worked, University of Maryland Capital Region Health, when I started, our trauma recidivism rate was 32%. So let's just put that into context. If you had 10 people on the trauma floor and 10 of them were injured, at least three of them, this was their second or third time there. So our job is primarily to provide services. And I would say the number one service that we can provide is our mental health services, because we're dealing with a lifetime of trauma that people are challenged with and are facing. And so that's where we start. And then we walk our clients through that process of providing as many psychosocial services as possible and peer support, with the hope that they do not return to the hospital for injury or end up dead through early violent death. And so I would just say the research that we've produced in the field has had mixed results. Some of those studies have shown that hospital violence intervention programs significantly reduce trauma recidivism, but we just haven't had enough studies to conduct the work, primarily because we've had a lack of research funding for gun violence research, which is from the Dickey Amendment in 1996. We've kind of been behind for 24 years. So just want to highlight and uplift that point. But I would say, in terms of why I think it's so promising and what inspires me, and I'll just give anecdotally, we had 116 participants in our program. We had one person within a 2-year period return to the hospital for a violent injury. That's a trauma recidivism rate of approximately 1%. And as I mentioned in the outset of this conversation, trauma recidivism rate was 32% at our hospital and can go all the way up to 65%. We had one young man that we were working with who had been shot every single year from the time that he was 17. He was shot when he was 17, shot when he was 18, and he was shot when he was 19. And I clearly remember telling our violence intervention specialist that if we could prevent this kid from coming back to the hospital next year, this would be the litmus test for whether our program is effective or not, even though we were serving well over 100 people. Well, I'm glad to say today, and this is 4 years later, that kid has not returned to the hospital, hasn't been rearrested. And so I would just uplift that one case as the cases that if we had the money to invest in young people who were engaged in high-risk lifestyles, we could produce that multiple times. And just in terms of cost, that one person costs $100,000. Every time someone comes into a hospital and they're admitted to a trauma center, that's $100,000 per patient, right? And what we know from the work produced by Everytown, gun violence costs estimated $280 billion per year. And so this is just a drop in the bucket, really, to invest in these programs, to save lives and to reduce the cost. And so I would just urge everyone, that we really need to invest in these programs, because right now, the fact that we do not have funding has really caused many programs across the state to suffer, because they've had to let people go. We've had to shift over to PPE because of COVID. And that's, and in many respects, and I know JT will also chime in on this, is that has affected in many respects why we have such a high rate of gun violence right now, because of the lack of investment in these programs. So I'll leave it there.
Oh, that's very helpful. And you also bring up the important, well, first of all, I'm going to say this whenever we hear the numbers, I know the four of us have always tried to register the numbers, help people understand what that looks like. But for our audience, I mean, that's very sobering. The amount of prevention dollars that could go into, you think about $100,000 for someone's life. Wow, what could we do if we pour so much more of our resources in the preventive side? How much we could save cost-wise as well as in lives. So that's always interesting. And also the research, how much research needs to be funded in order so we can get a great, data sampling and understanding of what was really, at stake here. So JT, I'm open up to you and Liz, any thoughts on that? And then also let's throw in this question too about who is really needed at the table to really create these safer neighborhoods. I know my question kind of earlier started with law enforcement, but feel free to share any other thoughts. Who else do we need to pull at the table to make sure these solutions are not only just championed, but they're actually instituted and they're rolling out? So please share some thoughts.
I mean, I think we all have to be at the table, which is a perfect example of the MD VIP group. I think it brings together, a bunch of different groups from different backgrounds and different positions in the work. You know, as a frontline worker, the majority of, you know, my time doing this work, I've never really worked with the legislative part of the group, right? So I never really understood that the way that I did. I mean, you're right, Tiffany, I was literally just wandering around the halls of Annapolis. You know, and I'm like, people told me, you know, look, you got to go make this person understand gun violence. And I'm like, okay, well, just take me to their office and I will talk to them, right? So, you know, went and just start talking to, you know, different politicians and really learning like about what's important to them, what's important to message, to help them understand messaging wise. And that's a big thanks to Liz and the group that helped us a lot with all of that background work, and Doc supporting with the numbers. And, you know, I think what's important mostly is that we have to make sure that we can blend the whole picture together and help people understand what the ecosystem actually looks like. So what we have to understand is that the research that Doc does is important for us to be able to go two ways. We have to be able to translate information back to him, and his information is valuable for us if we can take that information and implement it into frontline action. And that's what we work on a lot together is how can what we get from Doc help translate into frontline action, right? And then on the legislative side, I think what the senator said about just helping the colleagues just understand how important it is. I think for me, the most common sense thing to remember is that people are in survival mode. If they don't have to struggle to survive, violence will go down. Trust me, if people did not have to struggle to survive the way that they do, you would not see the level of rates of violence that you do. I'm not saying you wouldn't see violence because it inherently will happen, but if people weren't in the situations that they were in based on all the systemic things that we've been facing over all these years, you would not see the level of violence that you would. Let me give you an example. The little 10-year-old kid that goes to school every day, who has to wake up every morning, wake up his little brother and sister to get them ready because mom got to work 2 jobs and she's not home, right? So the only thing she does is sit a $5 bill down on the table and say, get some breakfast when y'all when y'all on your way to school. Well, they stopped at the corner store. What is the corner store full of? It's full of sugary snacks and sugary drinks. So he's going to grab a honey bun and a little Huggy juice, and that's what breakfast is. He just got loaded full of sugar, him and his younger sibling. Now they go to school. They sit in the classroom and they can't keep still. Well, would you be able to keep still if you just got pumped full of sugar? But then they're going to get diagnosed as ADHD. That's a misdiagnosis. They got a bad diet. Their diet is unhealthy. They don't have access to healthy foods. They don't have access to a healthy diet. And we don't understand like how all the physiological effects of food and diet affect the brain and affect how people are able to function and what they're able to do. See, violence is much larger than just the act of somebody pulling the trigger. It's much larger than the person standing behind the gun, holding the gun, and it's much larger than the victim on the other side of it. It's about people having a fair chance to survive and having a fair chance to live life on an equitable level. And we have to be able to bring all the partners together to be able to have that conversation in a way that it's uncomfortable because it should be. But we have to get results out of it. And people have to feel like humanity is back in this fight. And I think that when our politicians understand that, like Senator Van Hollen does, I remember just the first conversation that I was fortunate enough to have with Senator Van Hollen about the program. So, you know, I get it. You know what I mean? He listened, he sat there, he listened. But then at the end of the day, he said, you know what? I get it. I understand it. And that's important because a lot of people don't. They don't get it. They don't understand. So with this ecosystem, we just have to make sure that we have all the partners at the table. Community is made of partners. Police are partners. Politicians are partners. Citizens are partners. Your elected officials are partners. Community is made up of partnerships and collaboration, and everybody is part of community. And we have to build healthier, stronger communities in order for them to be safer. We can't get the safety without health, you know, so we have to understand how all of this kind of goes together and translates into what we see out in the streets.
Thank you, JT. Very well said. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Van Hollen. Any thoughts that you have, Senator, regarding partnerships between organizations and elected officials. Any thoughts? As JT mentioned, he and Liz have talked about meeting with you to discuss this. So anything you would like to add to that?
Well, I could not agree more that that's the kind of partnership that you need to have in order to move the needle and address the issue of gun violence. You need the people in the organizations at the neighborhood level, at the grassroots level, who are doing the work every day. And then you need to have legislators, whether they're at the state level or the federal level, understand what works and make sure that we provide resources to those who are on the front lines. And we all need to do a better job of making sure that organizations that have sometimes been overlooked in the past have a place at the table, because one of the big challenges with grants, either at the federal level or the state level, is that in itself requires a bit of infrastructure, right? You need to have somebody who is part of an organization that can help write grants, which is why, as we've gone about, drafting legislation, we're really focused now on trying to make sure that organizations that don't have an army of accountants and lawyers and proposal writers have a chance. How we have to proactively bring them in. I will say that we are trying now to provide more resources in a number of ways. The American Rescue Plan, those funds can be used for community violence prevention programs. And I'm really glad to see Mayor Scott in Baltimore using some of Baltimore's funds for that purpose. The state of Maryland got $3.7 billion as part of the American Rescue Plan. I'd like to see the state allocate more of those funds for this purpose. As Liz indicated, in the past, the governor vetoed important funding for community violence prevention programs. In addition to that, at the federal level, we've got $5 billion proposed as part of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. And we're still, as all of you know, trying to get that over the finish line. But in addition to that, there are these annual appropriations bills. And as I indicated, one of the good things this year is that we're able to, once again, hopefully, if we get this passed, direct funds where we know, the elected officials know, to organizations that are very effective, including organizations here on this call and others in Baltimore and around the state. And so, again, we haven't gotten that appropriations bill finished, but at the end of the day, it is this partnership you asked about, Tiffany. It's making sure that elected officials understand that in order to save lives and give people a chance, we need to connect resources with the organizations that are on the front lines doing the work.
Absolutely. And thank you for walking us through some of the funding opportunities at the table. Definitely, we have our eyes on the Build Back Better plan. Keeping hope alive there, that's some funding opportunity, but importantly, also at the state and hopefully even local levels, where ARP has been a saving grace for a lot of, communities who are trying to, seek out some funding for their frontline, work and their programs. So thank you for sharing that. Well, it's clear Maryland has a champion for a brighter tomorrow, one that is hopefully free of gun violence or working to reduce that. We've seen you, Senator, lead in the face of adversity before, and that we need to keep you in the Senate to continue to help build on the impactful work and keep those partnerships, because I see that you see the value of the importance of partnerships in this work. And also just, working with folks on the front line. They're the ones that are doing the hardest work. They take this work home, they're responding in the middle of the night. And I don't think enough people understand what people are doing to help reduce the violence, but you seem to be one that gets it because you're meeting with our partners and other folks in Maryland to do this. So I just want to open it up to you, Senator. Do you have any, closing remarks from today? Obviously, this is just, we just share with you all just a brief conversation. This conversation needs to continue, but I do want to open it up to you, Senator. Any last remarks and thoughts?
Well, Tiffany, let me just close by thanking you and Gabby and the entire team at Giffords for everything you're doing to support Maryland and to support other states and organizations around the country. And as we saw from Gabby's words in the video you played, she understands the toll of gun violence personally, and she took it upon herself to launch a national effort to end the tragedy of gun violence. And we all recognize that it's going to take a lot of work, and it's got to take place through every angle we can. And we've talked about all the different dimensions here today. But at the end of the day, we also have to be providing resources to those who are on the front lines. And I want to thank you. I want to thank JT, Liz, Dr. Richardson, and all the others that they work with every day on the front lines of fighting gun violence. And I am confident that as we get the word out more and we really get more people to listen to the stories of moms and dads and family members who have lost loved ones to gun violence, we will continue to make a difference. These organizations are making a difference, and we just need to make sure they have the resources to continue to do their good work. So I thank you for the work at Giffords you're doing. Thank you for the endorsement in this campaign for my Senate reelection. I can promise you all, I look forward to working together until we really make sure that we stop and prevent what is preventable, which is the scale of gun violence and the toll it takes in Baltimore, in Maryland, and around the country.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much for those remarks. And we appreciate your emphasis on listening and encouraging more people to listen to how important this is and to, enjoy those partnerships, because together, this is how, we can all together work on reducing gun violence. I definitely want to thank our fearless leader, Gabby, even though she's just here with us in spirit. We know that we do this work, just to continue to just raise the banner high, that this is so important. Gun safety, gun violence prevention, definitely so important to all of us here at Giffords. Thank you, JT. Thank you, Dr. Joe. Thank you, Liz, Senator Van Hollen. Thank you for this really important conversation. And remember, this conversation doesn't stop today. We're going to keep this rolling because it's so important and necessary. All of you all are doing such incredible work across Maryland to just kind of really help us to have more safer generations to come. If you all today listening, if you take anything away from the conversation, it's gun safety and funding for community violence prevention programs. This is on the ballot in November in Maryland. Right now, we have a 50-50 Senate, and the future of our gun safety majority hangs in the balance. We need to re-elect leaders with the courage to act on reducing gun violence, like Senator Chris Van Hollen, to get the job done and to make sure that our children and our grandchildren have the chance to grow up in a safer world. However, because of obstructive leaders on the other side of the aisle, we don't necessarily have the gun laws at the federal level. So states like Maryland that have strong state level gun laws, they're still susceptible to high rates of gun violence. It's obvious that we need to use our power at the ballot box to maintain and build upon our Democratic majority in Washington. We have such an exciting opportunity here in Maryland, and we need all of you in this fight to make it happen. With your help, we'll re-elect Chris Van Hollen to the United States Senate and continue to move our country down the road to becoming a gun safety nation. Our call for safer communities doesn't end at the federal level too. We need our state legislators to push for change as well. If you would like to join us in this fight, please text CVI to 34131 to get in touch with your state legislators in Maryland or whatever state that you're currently in, to let them know that we need to take action to keep our children and our families safe. Thank you all for tuning in. Until the next time.